Ecology is the scientific study of interactions among organisms and between organisms and their physical environment. Ecological studies may focus on levels of organization. First, we have the individual, which is an organism from a species. The next level is called population, which is a group of individuals that belong to the same species and live in the same area. After that, there is the community, which is an assemblage of different populations that live together in a defined area. All the organisms that live in a place together with the physical environment is known as an ecosystem. Then we have a group of ecosystems that share similar climates and typical organisms, called a biome. Finally, we have the biosphere, that is our entire planet, with all its organisms and physical environments. Ecologists use the word environment to refer to all conditions or factors surrounding an organism. Within an environment are different types of factors. A biotic factor is any living part of the environment with which an organism might interact. An abiotic factor is any non-living part of the environment.
Autotrophs use solar or chemical energy to produce food by assembling inorganic compounds into complex organic molecules. But autotrophs do more than feed themselves. Autotrophs store energy in forms that make it available to other organisms that eat them. That is why autotrophs are also called primary producers. Primary producers are the first producers of energy-rich compounds that are later used by other organisms. Types of producers. The autotrophs use two types of processes to obtain energy: photosynthesis and chemosynthesis. Photosynthesis captures light energy and uses it to power chemical reactions that convert carbon dioxide and water into oxygen and carbohydrates. Chemosynthesis uses chemical energy to convert carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and oxygen into carbohydrates and sulfur compounds. Consumers. The organisms known as heterotrophs acquire energy from other organisms by ingesting them in one way or another. Heterotrophs are also called consumers. Organisms that rely on other organisms for energy and nutrients are called consumers. There are 6 types of consumers. Carnivores kill and eat other animals, catch and kill to prey. Herbivores obtain energy and nutrients by eating plants, leaves, roots, seeds, or fruits. Scavengers are animals that consume the carcass of other animals that have been killed by predators or have died of another causes. Omnivores are animals whose diets naturally include a variety of different foods. Decomposers feed by chemically breaking down organic matter. Nutritivores feed on detritus particles, often chewing or breathing them into even smaller pieces.
In ecosystems, producers and consumers are linked through feeding relationships and in a similar way, from primary producers to various consumers. This synergy passes in a food chain, which is a series of steps of organisms transferring energy by eating. However, in most ecosystems, the feeding relationships are much more complicated than a single chain, so ecologists need a network of feeding interactions called a food web. Actually, each path of the food web is a food chain, so we can describe as food web and linking together all food chains of an ecosystem. However, relationships in food webs are not simple and are vulnerable to disturbances, which effects can be very dramatic. The decomposers and detritivores are very important in food webs because they convert dead material into nutrients used by the producers. Trophic levels and ecological pyramids. Each step in a food web is called trophic level, where primary producers always make up the first trophic level and consumers every other level. A way to represent these are on an ecological pyramid that shows the relative amount of energy or matter in a trophic level. There are three different types of pyramids: of energy, biomass, and numbers. The pyramid of energy shows the relative amount of energy available at each trophic level. The pyramid of biomass illustrates the relative amount of living organic matter at each trophic level. And the pyramid of numbers shows the relative number of individual organisms at each trophic level in an ecosystem.
Water molecules enter the atmosphere as the water vapor. When they evaporate from oceans or other water bodies, such as lakes or rivers, droplets grow until they are big enough and they fall to the Earth's surface as precipitation, in different ways like rain, snow, sleet, or hail. This precipitated water flows along the surface. Nitrogen cycle. Some bacteria convert nitrogen gas into ammonia. This process is called nitrogen fixation. Most of these bacteria live in the root and soil. Producers obtain this ammonia and uses it as fertilizer. Actually, humans do fertilizers with nitrogen, and this is another way ammonia reaches soil. Producers use these fertilizers, and herbivores consume these producers as well as the nitrogen. The nitrogen is passed through the food web. This nitrogen is released back again in wastes or dead animals. Some other bacteria obtain energy by converting nitrates into nitrogen gas, which is released into the atmosphere in a process called denitrification. Phosphorus cycle. As rocks and sediments wear down, phosphate is released. Some of this phosphate stays in ground and cycle between organisms and soil. Plants obtain phosphates from water or soil, and then it passes through the food web, the producers to consumers, and then to the ecosystem. Some other phosphate washes into rivers and drives it all the way to the ocean, where marine organisms consume this phosphate and incorporate them into biological cycles.
Recycling in the biosphere. Matter moves through the biosphere differently than the way in which energy moves. Elements pass from one organism to another and among parts of the biosphere through closed loops called biogeochemical cycles. There are many ways in which the processes involved in these cycles can be classified. Human activities that affect cycles of matter on a global scale include the mining and burning of fossil fuels, the clearing of land for building and farming, the burning of forests, and the manufacture and use of fertilizer. There are other ways like geological processes, chemical and physical processes, and biological processes. Nutrient limitation. The nutrient whose supply limits productivity is called a limiting nutrient. In order to reach soil, the growth of growth plants is typically limited by one or more nutrients that must be taken up by plants through the roots. That's why farmers use fertilizers. The open oceans of the world are nutrient poor compared to many land areas. In the ocean and other saltwater environments, nitrogen is often the limiting nutrient. In streams, lakes, and freshwater environments, phosphorus is typically the limiting nutrient.